will in turn bless others. I praise you and I thank you, Father God, for the freedoms we have as Americans and for the privilege of being a part of this great city. We thank you for this, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Have a seat. We're going to do try a couple of new things in our procedure tonight. It was recommended 2 weeks ago at the City Government 101. We're going to do a roll call. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mr. Stuber?
Here.
Mr. Tripp?
Here.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Here.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Here.
Mr. Wiley?
Here.
Mr. Eaton?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Westcott?
Here.
All is present.
We'll declare quorum is present. Council, you received the minutes from December in your packet. If there's no corrections or questions on that, I would entertain a motion.
Motion. Would you repeat that, please, Mr. Mayor?
Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from December that are in your packet.
Thank you. My mind was elsewhere. Pardon me.
All right. We do have a motion from Mr. Wiley
Second.
and a second. All in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Mckaughan, tell us how our finances are tonight.
Finance report for December end of year. General fund revenues for the month were $1,019,110, 0.95% above our year-to-date projection. Sales tax receipts were $784,558. Franchise fees were $57,937. Total expenditures for December were $937,419, which was 4.86% below our year-to-date projection. With the revenues that we had at 0.9 and the unexpended amount of money, we had $554,721 more receipted than expended for the year. Operations street fund, $137,440, 1.18% above the year-to-date projections. Sales tax receipts were $242,655. The new half-cent sales tax was $44,952. Street fund expenditures, operations were $170,966, 10% below projections. Sales tax improvements were $82,210 for the Interstate Drive and White Oak Lane. Capital expenditures were $8,392. Economic development revenues were $79,723, $76,504 from the tax, $3,515 for the interest. We had $22,500 expense for the parks. Capital assets, $710,182 receipts, $342,512 with the new sales tax, $342,512 for grant expense, refund, and $3,759 in interest. Expenditures were $359,119 to City Corp, Animal Control, Fire Department, Parks, and Airport. That's the end of the report. Something to get you up to speed where we're at today. Like I said, we had a $787,000 rollover this year. So that put us at $1,787,000, which we've talked about moving $100,000 and $300,000 of that into the building fund, into the fire truck fund. At the end of this month, this week, we actually dipped into our reserve. We're at $855,712. The reason for that is our annual expenditures for legal, workers' comp, property insurance, and vehicle insurance, and our first two payrolls. So we need, when we get this new money in that we're talking about getting, we need to think about upping our reserve if we can.
You talking about this?
That's pretty typical of the way it works around here for a year, but just to reinforce, the council seem to be comfortable with that idea of kind of easing our reserve fund up, but that was that's what drove that recommendation, so.
So, can I ask?
Sure.
So, how much do we really have in reserve right now, today?
We have 855,000 in general fund bank. We're into the $1 million reserve by 145,000.
So we do need to think on putting that money back and,
Putting some more than $1 million in the reserve. And it only happens the first 3 months of the year, and then should be back up to even money, but we just need to get that extra in there, I think.
are we sort of at a good 800,000 compared to what amount were we last year when we had to dip into it?
At the first of the year last year, we were into it at about 600,000.
That's what I thought, okay.
Now,
So it's better this year than last year?
yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jerry, just for clarification, we talked in the agenda meeting about trying to increase that reserve to $1.5 million
That's correct.
so that we could get some more cushion in that fund. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yes, that's the
we had
number I
that
would like to
discussion.
get to, yes.
Any other questions for Mr. McCoy? Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
For the mayor's report, I'd like to get Mr. Frazier up here to make a presentation for us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Today, I'd like to read this plaque on behalf of the City of Russellville and Russellville Regional Airport and Russellville Regional Airport Commission. This plaque is presented in memory of Mr. Phil Cowger in grateful appreciation for his dedicated service to the City of Russellville.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the council and the airport commission and everyone in Polk County that were so good to us and professional, that still made it real. I appreciate you, all of you. We all do.
Daniel? Okay. Thank you all so much.
Council, with your permission, we're going to rearrange a little bit and move the organizing the city and passing our rules up to the mayor's report. We're going to try to do a couple of things and get as many folks on their way home, just in case the weather. I promised my wife that we wouldn't have bad weather tonight because she has to work tomorrow, but I was wrong one time, so let's see if we can get everybody home. Let's go with rules first or organized first?
Do the rules first, and
All right.
we'll go with the organization.
You've got a separate package for the rules for this year. Mr. Smith, are there any changes? It's just cleaning it up, it's pretty much.
Right, the 30-day period on submission of appointments, just took it out because we hadn't been doing it, so other than that, there's no real changes to it.
Anybody got any questions or comments on it? Mr. Eaton?
Yes. Do we need a motion to discuss this?
Yes.
I move that we approve this document for the rules and procedures for the City Council of Russellville.
I got a motion to approve the rules. Who was the second?
Second.
Mr. Wiley, second. Discussion?
Mayor,
Mr.
in,
Stuber, go ahead.
in the back of our packet here, under Exhibit A, is that a new thing, or is that an ongoing thing, or?
That is Mr. Wiley's, what he put on as, which should be addressed as old business number 2, or wait, excuse me, as new business, new business number 14.
Okay, we're not voting on that now, right?
No, it is, this-
No.
it
Okay,
is
I'm
new
sorry.
business 14.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Is that, where is that in this document?
No, it's not in back.
Okay,
It's in the agenda
All right.
tonight.
all right. I have a couple of questions, if I might, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir?
I know we're looking at approving this document as it is. And my first question is, if we look at Appendix I and J on page 63 and 64 of this document, there are some old names, et cetera, in there. Are we, if we approve this as is, are we approving Appendix I and J as they are written in here?
No, just it needs to be blank, it needs to be the numbers, but blanks. It's gonna be replaced by what Ms. Collins has here.
Okay, I understand we're gonna go through that process, but I wanted to make sure that we were correct in what we included in this when we passed it.
Right, no, it'll be up-to-date information for 2016.
Okay, and then I've got a couple of more questions, if I may. In section 3.10 on page 6, why are we removing that in its entirety?
Because, best I can tell, the council has not been following it.
I thought we had been placing those on the agenda and bringing them to the, we did that at our agenda prep meeting, or have been doing that part of it.
That they were, that I removed the one that talked about it being 30 days out, so. But if you want to leave it in there, it's fine.
I'm just asking that question. I mean, is that, does anybody else look at that? If, I didn't know, I thought we needed to have those brought before the council beforehand.
Who would
How,
approve
how,
it?
how do we announce them if we don't do that? I
about
guess,
it?
is there another place in here?
The part that I talked or had removed was there was an old rule that I was trying to strike, which was had to be at least brought up 30 days prior
yeah.
to the meeting. That was not being followed.
Yeah,
But
I
as-
thought we got rid of that already.
Okay, I was just trying to make sure that one was gone because it's not been followed for a while. But you have to put it on the agenda, you have to announce it at the agenda meeting. So,
Well, shouldn't we have something to that effect in here? That
Yeah.
we need to put it on at least at our agenda preparation meeting before the
Yes.
meeting? Okay, all right. And then I've got one more little,
So we can leave 3.1,
the first one in there and strike the rest? That first
Yes.
part of that? Okay.
yeah, 3.10, we're gonna leave in.
Yeah. All right,
Thing.
and then,
Mr. Smith, y'all, are we leaving the whole thing?
no,
Okay, just the first paragraph.
just that first big paragraph and the
The
rest
first
of it.
paragraph will be left in, B, C, D will be struck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's okay, if that's okay with everybody else.
yeah, you'll just go back to the old number.
Do you have another question, Mr.
Yeah, I've got one other brief one, and this is a procedural thing, and it's maybe silly, but on page 7, at the bottom of page 7, where we have a change in there, letter K.
Right.
It says, if the people that fit in those particular commissions or boards or whatever are not a liaison, then how can they be chosen as if they are a liaison?
Because I was trying to, at the time, this was in effect, the aldermen in those positions had voting membership, and that was, starting last year, that was going to change. And so that's why the strikeout,
shouldn't be a voting member.
and make them purely a liaison. And so the only people that can vote are from the A&P Commission, signed to the A&P Commission.
Okay, that's what this is doing then,
Yes.
is restricting the voting
Yes,
capacity of the council members.
that's
Okay,
correct.
I wasn't clear on that, and I'm good with that. I think
Okay.
that's a good move. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, got one more question. On that same page at the very top, and it overflows from page 6, the question of how we determine the picks as we go through this, should we not vote on that
That's-
prior to the adopting this?
Well, you can either way. I just remember last year, we switched to what I guess I call the serpentine rule or serpentine system. And it's either, you can either go traditional or go serpentine or something.
Yeah, where you start with
Yeah.
the senior and then come back the other way, right?
Right. And just
Okay,
go 1 through 8, and
Yeah.
then start back at 1 is the
8, yeah.
traditional, and
Yeah.
serpentine's 1 through 8, and 8 through 1.
yeah, okay.
That's what we did last time.
Yeah,
And that's what we did.
last time.
That's
Yeah.
good for you, yeah, you get back to back.
Well, I guess all I'm saying is with this down the way it is that the way we're gonna do it?
We need to specify one or the other.
Yeah,
It says to specify one or the other,
okay,
or some other way.
okay.
With that question out there, procedurally, does somebody need a motion to amend this to include the discussion we just had? Mr. Eaton?
That's what
Okay.
yeah. Well, I make that motion that we do the serpentine process as we did last year and strike the other traditional way.
Okay.
Can I
Yeah.
ask
So-
a question based on what you just, some of the changes or things you noted?
Yes, ma'am.
The voting members, so am I head clear? The only commission or committee that you're on that has voting privileges is the A&P Commission?
That, and I think the cemetery's the other one,
You're on cemetery, do you vote?
and that's,
Cemetery vote.
Yeah. Do I now?
Do you vote?
the cemetery is a voting, the city council member that is on the cemetery is a voting member, according to the ordinance that sets it up.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, in the past, Main Street liaison has been voting.
Right, and starting last year, when we negotiated the alliance agreement, there was a discussion between myself, the mayor, and some alliance members about, with the lawsuit in Little Rock, that maybe we should not have a city council person be a voting member of any organization in which we have a service contract with, so as to avoid any type of, to avoid what Little Rock and North Little Rock got into. And that seemed to be the direction that everybody agreed to after discussion on those merits was made. And so, based on that, that's why, I've taken that same thought process and have applied to the Boys and Girls Club, and also it's what I think that should be done to, again, avoid any type of liability for taxpayer money on a service contract. It's just to try to strengthen a true independent contractor basis, because when you hire somebody as an independent contractor, you don't get to vote on their internal affairs. So after that discussion, that was just kind of a different trend to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Those are my only questions, Mr. Mayor, and
Okay, so let me see if I understand your motion for the amendment. That appendixes I and J will be replaced with the new information we're going to vote on next.
yes,
That Section 3.10 on page 6, we'll strike everything after the first paragraph, but leave the first paragraph in place.
Yes.
On page 7, we will make the selection as we're picking our committees and liaisons. We're going to use the serpentine system so that the most senior goes first, the least senior goes last, and then it turns around and the least senior goes first and the most senior goes last until all of them are picked. Is everybody okay?
And
with
back
all
and
that?
forth, yes.
Okay, so let's vote on the amendment first.
Yes.
We got a motion?
Yes.
Somebody want a second?
Second.
Second is Mr. Wiley. Where are we, ordinance? Resolution, all right, then, everybody in favor of amending it to clarify all of these questions, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, so now we're back to the main motion to approve our rules of conduct for
Yes.
2016. We've got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that carries. That brings us to organizing our city. Madam Clerk, why don't you run us through that? You've done it for 37 years.
You should have a list before you of the liaison appointments and the committees. And the senior alderman would start with Mr. Stuber. Mr. Stuber, Mr. Tripp, Richard Harris, Ms. Harris, Robert Wiley, Mr. Eaton, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Westcott. So I guess Mr. Stuber can,
We're just doing finance, property, and personnel committees for the time, for this round, right?
yes.
All right, Mr. Stuber?
Personnel.
Mr. Tripp?
Finance.
No,
Mr. Richard Harris? Personnel. Ms. Freddie Harris?
Finance.
Mr. Wiley?
Finance.
Mr. Eaton?
Finance.
Mr. Brown and Mr. Westcott will both go by default to personnel. So no changes on any of that from where we were at the end of the year. Where do you want to go next, Ms. Clerk?
advertising promotion.
I
We
think
did
that's
last
right.
time.
We did, opened everything up.
That's
at that
correct. So
point.
advertising promotion, Stormwater Drainage Appeals Board, and all of these 20 liaison appointments is what we'll be selecting now. Mr. Stuber?
I thought we was going back the other way.
Serpentine. Well, last time
Well-
we did it this, we started at the top again. on
Yeah, this
these.
is a completely different
Different
category.
Yeah,
so
we should
Yeah, that's
start
kind of how
top.
we did it. So-
Okay, okay. Community development,
Mr. Tripp?
Public Works.
Mr. Richard Harris?
A&P.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Planning Commission.
Mr. Wiley?
police department,
Mr. Eaton?
Fire Department.
Mr. Brown?
City Court.
Mr. Westcott?
Airport.
Mr. Westcott, you get to select again.
Intermodal.
Mr. Brown?
The new one ATU?
Mr. Eaton?
Planning Commission.
Freddie Harris had that one. Ms. Harris took that one.
I'm sorry. Say what?
Ms. Harris took Planning Commission on
Okay,
her
I
first
thought
bid.
she said A and P. I'm sorry.
Mr. Harris has that.
Okay.
No, wait a minute, we're on Bill Eaton.
Yeah, we're clearing up where we're at.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so,
Parks and Rec.
and that brings us up to Mr. Wiley.
A and P,
Ms. Freddie Harris,
Civil service.
Mr. Richard Harris,
Main Street.
Mr. Tripp,
IT. What'd you say?
said IT.
Okay.
and that gets us to Mr. Stuber,
Animal control.
and Mr. Stuber again,
Cemetery.
Mr. Tripp,
Mayor, question, just like with the
Historic
Main
District.
Street, number 3, number 4, number 14 are all contingent upon the contracts, I presume.
correct, yeah.
So
It could
if
be
you
a
pick
wasted
'em-
pick,
If you
or,
pick them, you may or may not have a
that's correct.
That's
Boys, Girls Club.
Mr. Richard Harris,
Code enforcement.
What did you say?
Code enforcement. Which one we got left?
we have 3, 11, 19, and stormwater appeals.
There should be 2 people on cemetery.
Okay.
So-
And number 5, we have 1 selected, we usually have 2 liaisons on it, so. Would we leave off with Mr. Harris,
That's right.
Ms. Harris?
Stormwater.
We still got 11 open?
That's correct.
I'll take 11. Historic District Commission.
Okay. That brings us to Mr. Eaton.
I'll take 911.
Mr. Brown?
Stormwater.
Mr. Westcott?
I'll be the other one on cemetery.
And is that everything but number 3?
Mhm.
And Mr. Westcott, that comes back to you then. If that's correct with everybody.
Need to probably do that.
All right.
That's it?
Just to clean this up, Mr. Smith thinks we should make a motion to accept this. Somebody want to do that?
Motion.
I'll second that.
All right, motion Mr. Wiley, second Mr. Westcott. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good, moving on. Committee reports. Finance, Mr. Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor.
Let me stop just a second here. Do the two committees want to go ahead and pick chairmans, or are we okay with letting Mr. Tripp and Mr. Stuber continue
Yeah, there's
since we
two.
haven't
You already-
changed anything?
Make a motion that we, Mr. Tripp, Mr. Stuber.
Yeah.
maintain chairmanship.
Very well then. Mr. Tripp,
Mayor, I'll be happy to let somebody.
not so fast, baby.
All right, this short.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, yes, if you did both. Are
Did
we
y'all
ready?
have y'all had any meetings?
All right. On your agenda here from last week, agenda finance meeting on the 12th, we had a discussion on the aquatic center. Just a little further update on that. We been presented with a proposed schedule for the aquatic center and should have a 90% cost budget analysis on January 29th. And then hopefully everything will be falling in place soon after that. Item number 2, consideration resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk enter into a 5-year lease agreement for renewal for the property located on Highway 247 for farming purposes. And that was also in addition of the additional 50 or so acres that was passed by the finance committee in form of a motion to present to the full council.
Council, you heard the motion. Renew the lease on the farm property. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Mayor, next, I'm gonna combine 2 items here. Number 3 here is consideration of resolution accepting a bid from Redline Contractors LLC for demolition of 3 dilapidated structures. And then at tonight's meeting, item number 8 was the appropriation for $61,995. Those were both passed as form of a motion to the full council, and I believe Mr. Eaton may have a question or discussion on that.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may. From a finance committee standpoint, and serving on that as an alderman for the city of Russellville, it disturbs me to a great extent here that on the general fund, an amount of $61,995 for the removal of 3 structures. The majority of that money is for the removal of one, which happens to be on South Arkansas. My humble opinion, the owner should be the one removing that, not the city of Russellville. And it's my strong opinion that when this is done, the building removed, the value of that property is going to go up considerably on that particular avenue through our city. So I don't know, and I'm asking City Attorney Smith what we should do to affect placing a lien on this property immediately or as soon as possible that we can for the amount of the removal of that facility. And also the process that we would need with this lien and when to apply that lien on that property.
What we do in all cases when it comes to removing dilapidated buildings is first the work to remove has to be done. Once it's done, we contact the owner, responsible party to pay the bill. If that's not paid in 30 days, then the city files a lien on the property, enters it into the Pope County Courthouse records for the assessor's office or the clerk's office for the lien. Those liens have to be done filed 120 days after the work is done. At that point, once it is successfully filed, the city has up to 10 years in which to enforce that lien. The enforcement mechanism is foreclosing on the lien within that 10-year period. There is nothing in the state law as to when the city has to file during that 10-year period. If it's not sold Normally, if the property changes owners, the lien is supposed to be collected at that time. However, sometimes property be sold 20, 30 years. So the city may at some point, if it wants to recoup the cost on this particular property or others that have a lien on it, is to foreclose on the lien, which is filing a complaint against the property and property owner and having a judge declare a public sale of the property in which the city will start the minimum bidding at the final cost it takes for all the costs, the work, any type of legal proceedings that cost, notice requirements, a certified mail, and it'll set that as the minimum, and then if anybody bids on it, then that money will go to the city, and any excess will go to the owner at that point in time.
Well, is establishing the procedure to go ahead with the processing of that lien within a specified period of time, would that be appropriate or possible to do?
If you want, there's nothing that prohibits that if you want to go ahead and...
Well, I certainly wouldn't want that to sit there for 20 years or 30 years and the city be out that money in that regard. And I would say that I would like to look at that to be completed within 2 years.
Is that a motion to amend? You making a
In
motion to
that
amend?
regard, to add my question in regard to this about placing the lien on this property and that the lien be processed within 2 years, as Mr. Smith explained to us.
I guess you're wanting to foreclose within 2 years
Yes.
after the lien has been put on the books?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, so
that's my motion.
Is there no time frame right now on that?
20 years, up to 20 years, if he keeps it.
There's not?
hang on.
No.
Trey.
There's nothing other than if the property changes hands, then at that point, the lien's on the books and will be assessed when there's a transaction. But if there's no transaction, then there's, the only other mechanism is foreclosure of the lien, taking it to court for a judicial sale.
Is that the deal that's subject to a 10-year, you have to, if you're going to do it, you have to do it within the first 10?
That's correct.
So,
Can we establish timeframes for that?
Mr. Eaton made a motion that we establish the time frame as 2 years.
2 years.
That's second.
Okay, I'd like discussion.
Okay, we've got a motion and second discussion.
There's, I think, 3 properties in question here. Is it really, I'm in support of Mr. Eaton's motion, by the way, but is it appropriate to single out a single piece of property when there's 3 years? Should we not include all 3 into this motion?
All of them be like that from now on,
Just these 3.
just these 3? Well, why don't we vote to do it on all of them? Instead of having,
Well, we could come back and do that.
Mr. Eaton, did your motion
I
pertain to all
I
3?
was just in reference to this one particular one.
I-
The reason for that being where it is and the very
valuable of it.
value of it and what it will do once we clean this. And here again, I think the individual has the ability financially and whatnot to do what needs to be done here without the city being out this money. And that my motion stands.
Mr. Smith, do you want to weigh in on doing one different than the other? Is there something we should consider on that?
Well, you get into whether or not, whether it's discriminatory, and if so, is there a valid reason? Clearly, if you're going to pursue one and the others, then it would look as though that the city's treating them in a discriminatory fashion. However, there's level of scrutiny based on such a substantive right such as property. In this case, I think the scrutiny would be the lowest, which is their rational basis. Rational basis is usually always upheld by a court of law. The rational basis here, as Mr. Eaton says, is that, one, the property is such in a location that it will recoup the city's cost, and that the city's cost really shouldn't be expended because of the means of the owner of the property to remove it. So versus the other two properties are in less desirable areas and therefore probably won't recoup the loss.
That's right.
So I think based upon that, a court would say that it would look at the lowest type of scrutiny and find that it had a rational, reasonable basis for foreclosing the lien 2 years and maybe letting the others wait a little bit longer for just a regular transaction to occur. At least that's the way I see it, so.
All right, so the one that we're gonna apply the 2-year limit on is 408, is it 408?
408 South Arkansas.
South Arkansas. So we need to vote on that amendment first, to put
Can
a
I ask
2-year.
a question
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
kind of, just for clarification here, since I read something in the newspaper the other day?
Okay.
Is one of these locations the little church down there, is that in the church building that I read that they were looking at maybe getting some sort of historical grant? Or is that?
No.
Okay,
It's not
good.
one of
Okay,
these. That one actually, we're just gonna hold off because there are a number of groups interested in.
I just
working
wanted to make
together,
sure it
yeah.
wasn't included as one of these three. on
That
these
one,
addresses. Okay.
the church is gonna meet fairly soon and discuss what they wanna do with it.
Okay.
And we should wait until then, and if they decide they wanna keep it, there's a lot of groups that want to help preserve that. It's historically significant.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's not one of these.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mayor, I want to know, we're going to revisit this and try to put some ordinance or something together for future?
For the time limit?
Yes.
I
time limit,
think we
some for-
I think that'd be fine. I mean, I'd be scared to look at how much money we've got tied up that we've
Well,
done.
I
with
think
it, and
it's
we're waiting.
something we definitely have the council need to do.
We
Okay.
do. I agree.
All right. Ms. Clerk, will you make a note
Could
to
have been
remind us to do that? Mr. Smith?
Well, we just put them
Mayor?
in the resolutions when they're passed,
Okay,
condemning them,
okay.
Mayor,
that we put it in a paragraph.
Mr. Tripp?
or this may be for Mr. Smith. Can I amend that amended motion?
No, I don't think so. I think there's, according to the rules we've passed, there's only amendment to the main.
Okay.
There's only a secondary amendment, not a tertiary.
And so for clarification, this only includes one address, correct?
Correct. Okay. So the amendment we're voting on is Mr. Eaton's motion to put a 2-year time limit on the 408 South Arkansas property and then seek foreclosure to recoup our money. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Carries. Now we're going to go back to Mr. Tripp's motion from Finance Committee, and you're covering item 3 on
No.
last Tuesday's agenda and item 8.
3 is approving the resolution, and 8 tonight is the appropriation of $61,995.
Okay, everybody all right with that?
I thought it was number 5 on the old business last.
No. 3.
No,
What is it?
it's,
It's the old one.
Oh, okay. Well, mine says 5.
okay, you all right? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Tripp?
Item number 4, appropriation of $246,974 from the Criminal Justice Fund to purchase and equip 5 new police patrol cars and 1 administrative car. This was passed by the Finance Committee to present in the form of a motion to the full council.
All right, do you want to do all of your appropriations and transfer separately?
I was already having a second thought there. Yes, number 5, $18,000 parks special sales tax to dig for a well at the soccer complex. Number 6, $202,500 from the capital assets fund, which is the new sales tax, also known as ED. Number 3, for the engineering service contract for Weir Road and I-40. Number 7, $950 grounds maintenance, Parks and Rec. Number 8, $16,700 for the building, I believe, roof, a couple different roofing projects that Parks and Rec has. Number 9, $105,541 is again from the capital sales tax, also known as ED. Number 3, this is a rollover redo. We had appropriated this money for the Parks and Rec vehicles, equipment, so forth, mowers, backhoes, and things like that. Late last year, didn't get spent, so this is just a reappropriation. Number 10, $550. Police Department, base salary calculation error. Number 11, $28,420. Street Department, for the Flag Island Planner project that's currently underway. Number 12, $15,337.85. Court Automation Fund for a data server. Number 13, $20,531.25. Court Automation Fund to do some network upgrade, wiring upgrades, etc. Number 14, $1,361.67. Pass-through insurance vehicle maintenance for the police department. Item number 15, $25,337.30. Street sales tax improvement, moving some leftover funds from Interstate Drive to White Oak to finish that drainage project. In addition, if you'll move to tonight's agenda, number 6 was an appropriation of $100,000 capital asset fund to move money into the fire truck fund. Number 7, appropriation capital assets fund, $300,000. Again, those two are moving surplus money, rollover money from 2015 into the special accounts. The capital asset fund is for the building maintenance fund of $300,000. Number 8, appropriation for city attorney's office.
We did 8.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, great. Number 9, appropriation street fund, $8,580. Pass through for accident repair for the Phoenix Bridge. And those were all passed as appropriations, transfers, etc. by the Finance Committee to present to the council in form of a motion.
Man, I like the way you think. All right, items 4 through 15 and 6, 7, and 9. I think there's been full discussion on this. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Tripp.
There are 2 more, I think, will be done. Number 4 from tonight's agenda, consideration of resolution, City of Russellville relating to the acceptance of a bid for Public Works Department to authorize mayor and city clerk treasurer to execute agreement. This is for the South Vancouver Sidewalk Project, which is going to put a sidewalk from the back of the Neighborhood Market Project on Vancouver to the roundabout. And then number 5, you want me to do these separate or together? Okay. Let's do them separate to be clear.
Yeah.
That was passed by the Finance Committee to present to the full council in the form of a motion.
Council, you heard the motion on item 4 of the finance agenda for tonight. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 5 from tonight's agenda, consideration of resolution accepting the final report of the Hilltop Sewer Improvement District, number 6 of the City of Russellville, and releasing the commissioners. This was voted on, passed by the Finance Committee to present in the form of a motion to the full council. And I would like to note on that, just from the discussion of the meeting, since this is kind of a new subject here. This is the sewer tax up in the Hilltop area that's been in play for 10, 15, 18 years, something like that. And the taxes that are due this year from the 2015 taxes will pay off that debt, and then the money left over will be paid back to the city. And at that point, once all bills are paid and the money brought back to the city, which will be late this year, it will release the commissioners and dissolve that at that point.
I believe that's correct. Does that sound right, Mr. Smith?
It does.
All right, then.
I have a question.
Question?
Shouldn't
Mr.
those
Harris.
excess funds be returned back to the individuals who've overpaid? Because any excess funds is overpayment on that particular loan. I don't understand why the city's taking that money and why isn't it redistributed back to the property owners?
Mr. Smith, was that not the resolution the owners proposed
Yeah.
themselves?
It's the way it's
Never goes back to the owner.
structured to be done, and in the past, any type of sewer district, when they have an excess, it goes to the city. It's just the way it's structured to, when it's formed, that it's recognized any excess will go to the city.
That's because we take up,
Well,
we maintain the system.
We maintain it, plus we authorize it to begin with. We pass an ordinance, so That's just how it's structured.
Any other discussion on that?
Mayor, of note, I believe it was stated it was about $42,000 was the projection on that.
42.7 and change?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That was Mr. Harris.
That's correct. Mayor, I believe
Motion carries.
that concludes the Finance Committee reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Stuber, do you have any work for us?
Yes, Mayor, we have a couple items on here pertaining to changing a couple sentences in the personnel handbook regarding a vacation and catastrophic leave. Those items back here in a little further on page 6 of 9 and 7 of 9 and 8 of 9. Basically what that's doing, just changing a little wording to make things a little more clear. If you need any further explanation, Mrs. Tanessa Vaughn is back here and she'll be glad to explain it to you.
You're recommending that in the
Yes,
motion?
I'm recommending that as a motion.
All right, y'all heard the motion. Is there any discussion
What's the motion?
to adopt these changes?
It's an ordinance?
It's an ordinance?
Yes.
It's
So,
an ordinance?
yeah.
Well, that
Just-
complicates everything.
I move we suspend the rules and read one time by title only.
We got a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Eaton. All in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
You gotta call roll on that too, don't you?
No, no,
Oh, good.
no suspension.
All right, so, Mr. Smith,
An ordinance amending sections of the City of Russellville Personnel Policy Manual for the purposes this ordinance, if passed, would amend the City of Russellville Personnel Policy Manual with regards to page 15 and 16 on the vacation of non-uniform police policy, and also on page 26 through 28 concerning the catastrophic illness bank policy, both which are attached as a copy, as an exhibit to this copy, incorporated per reference.
Move to adopt.
Second.
all right, we've already suspended the rules. Is there any other discussion? In that event, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mr. Stuber,
Yes.
Mr. Eaton,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Westcott,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Richard Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Tripp.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, Chairman Stuber, you got any other things for us?
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see if I can get back on the right page.
Commissioners reappointment.
I believe you're correct, Mr. Wiley.
No, we didn't, no, we didn't do that
Mr.
one.
Stuber first. I've got my papers scattered all over.
The reappointment for
Oh,
A
here
and
it
P
is. I got it.
Commission.
Okay, we've got a request by the A&P to reappoint Mr. Sean Gordon and Ms. Sarah Keating
Motion.
for another term.
Mr. Wiley made
Mr.
motion.
Wiley motion, Ms. Harris?
Second.
All right, any discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, item 2 is the appointment of Commissioners Wendell Miller and Peggy Stratton. They are both planning commission members. I believe, it says unanimously recommended by BOA, but I believe that's planning commission, right?
No, I think they,
I thought planning commission nominates them
to the board.
to the BOA.
Yeah.
All right,
To serve on the BOA.
either way,
Oh, I see what you're
that's their
saying.
choice, and
Yeah.
so, Mr.
Move
Miller and
to
Ms.
approve.
Stratton to serve on the BOA.
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
We've got a motion, Mr. Eaton, second, Mr. Westcott. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We already did 2.
Oh, that brings us to old business 1 then. Franchise tax. This this a first reading or a second reading? Did we change it?
Second. This is the one that,
This is different. The last time we had
Getting
one
old.
related to Ritter, did we not?
we had two, one related to Ritter for grant of franchise, and this one which also assessed a franchise for the internet, data, and broadband access. I've put in here other past the ordinance, which is Suddenlink's response. They believe that the federal ITFA, the Internet Tax Freedom Act, prohibits such a franchise fee that we're proposing. However, if you look at the last page of what I've got copied as of the ITFA, you'll see how tax is defined, but then there's an exception which says such term does not include any franchise fee or similar fee imposed by a state or local franchising authority. So I've contacted the Municipal League. They are also looking into it, having a clerk do some research. I'd like to wait before we take any more action to see if their research determines whether our state law would be under the exception or falls under the general
Motion to table.
tax.
Do we-
So
Would it be best to table it or to
postpone it to
read
next
it
month,
one
and I
time?
hope we will
Okay.
have an answer.
May I ask one other question before we move away from this then? Does the Suddenlink franchise have the same things in it as this one does?
Yes, they'll both have, it'll both have it so that it's the same 4.25%.
And on the same items?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. It's, I copy and pasted the same language on all of them.
good.
All right, we got a motion to table by Mr. Wiley. Need a second.
I'll second that.
Second, Mr. Westcott. All in favor of tabling old business 1?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 2, is ordinance submitting to the voters of the city of Russellville the option of electing aldermen to staggered 4-year terms.
Mayor, if we do this, it has to go to the voters on the next general election. And if we don't pass it this month, I believe I was told that it won't won't be eligible to be voted on this next fall. So I want to position 1, if we pass this tonight, I want it to be position 1 first. Then if position 2 will catch up 2 years later. Make a motion to suspend the rules, read the title only with short explanation.
All right, we got a motion to suspend the rules and read one time. Waiting on
Can I ask a question? We need to let that die or get a second first.
I'll
second that.
Okay, we've got a second. All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, Mr. Tripp,
Was the deadline on that this month or by March?
It was about February,
February 1st or by the end of February or?
February 1st, if I remember correctly.
Is that the timeframe, Brian?
While we're,
If we don't get past it tonight, it's dead.
while we're discussing this, if I might, on page 1 of 3 of that ordinance, under section 3, paragraph C,
It needs to go to the current.
that's what I was thinking. Thank
It
you.
does. Yeah, that'll be changed.
All right.
Make a motion to adopt.
now let's hang on a second. Any more discussion on this?
Mayor,
Okay.
you
Well,
know,
First, we got to vote on the motion to suspend.
I thought we
Did
did.
do that?
We did that.
We did
All
that.
right, so now, Mr. Smith, you want to read by title only?
Yes.
Short explanation.
sorry.
Tell us what we're doing.
In order to submit to the voters of the city of Russellville, Arkansas, the option of electing aldermen to staggered 4-year terms for the purposes this ordinance if passed would submit to the voters the ordinance to change the term of aldermen from 2 years to 4 years and also make it a staggered term so that every 2 years 4 aldermen, based on the position they hold in the ward, will be up for re-election or election.
All right, we've had some discussion. Any other discussion?
Uh,
Mr. Stuber?
You know, I'm all for 4-year terms, because it's not gonna affect me one way or the other. But, you know, I think those terms should correspond with the mayor's terms, because if we have an alderman in an off year there, and that alderman chooses to challenge the mayor for his seat and he's successful, then we're left without an alderman after the general election, and that's gonna require another $10,000 election.
Exactly.
And, you know, there's no reason to stagger them. You know, in the past, when the mayor served 2 terms and alderman served, when the mayor served 2 years and the alderman served 2 years, they all got elected at the same time. And I would see no problem with electing them all at the same time. And on top of that, that gives one position on the city council a better opportunity for running for mayor without relinquishing their seat on the city council.
That's fine.
My understanding of the state law that establishes or authorizes this local legislation is that the only option the ordinance can be in for a 4-year term is staggered based on position. They does not authorize all 8 to be a 4-year term at the same time. It's either this or you don't do it.
Did everybody hear that?
Yeah.
They have to be staggered if we do this in this manner.
Yes.
Okay.
So our options are leave it 2 years running concurrent or 4 years staggered. Correct?
That is correct.
All right. Any other questions?
I'm going to make a motion we adopt.
For clarification,
Mr.
If
Tripp?
it passes.
this is to be voted on November of this year. It would not take effect until 2 years later,
2 years later.
January of
18.
18.
Yeah.
Correct.
Same time the mayor would be running.
So the terms would be 2018 through
Yeah.
2021.
That's when it starts to kick in, yes.
Okay.
Most of us won't be here.
By then, there may be nobody wants to run for mayor, so. All right, any other discussion? Mr. Wiley has made a motion to adopt. He's not here a second.
No.
I'll second his motion.
Second, Ms. Harris. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on that?
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
No.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Eaton?
No.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries 6 to 2?
It does.
6 to 2, okay.
I think maybe to do emergency clause only because in case there's any technicality before February 1st.
Yeah.
so
I'll
this
make
is
that
back.
motion.
Motion on the emergency clause.
Second.
Second, Mr. Tripp. All in favor of the emergency clause, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
No.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Eaton?
No.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I believe that brings us to new business 1, if I'm keeping track correctly. Ordinance amending the zoning code. Do I hear a motion?
Mayor, I'd make a motion to suspend the rules, read by title only for the first of 3 readings only.
Okay, everybody understand, the motion is just to
Yes.
suspend the rules for reading 1.
Second.
Second, Mr. Wiley. All in favor of the motion to suspend, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
You need to call the roll, or you,
What number are we on?
yeah, new business 1.
Yes. Did we suspend the rules?
motion to suspend the rules. Who made the motion?
I did, or he did, and I second it.
Yeah, Tripp made the motion, Wiley made the second. The motion was to suspend the rules for the first reading only. And read by title only. Okay, so let's call a roll.
Mr. Tripp,
Yes.
Mr. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Stuber,
No.
Ms. Freddie Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Westcott,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Eaton,
No.
Mr. Richard Harris.
Yes.
Motion
All right,
carries.
motion to suspend the rules carries. Mr. Smith?
In order to amend the zoning code for the city of Russellville, Arkansas, ordinance number 1966, and for the purposes this ordinance, if passed, would amend ordinance number 1966, Article 3, Section 3, subsection 21, regarding sidewalks on C21-1C, where changes in previous existing or mixed uses that now require planning commission review shall not have to comply with that subsection.
Mr. Mayor, do we have an opportunity for discussion
Yes, we
in
do.
regard to
Yes,
this?
we do, Mr. Eaton, and you're recognized.
Okay. Well, I disagree with the change in Section 1, Paragraph 3.21.1. And I don't have any problem with the other changes that are in there. But the reason that I do is I'll just kind of throw out an example. And my recommendation would be, rather than to go ahead and pass this, that we just wait on it until we do our makeover on our codes and ordinances related to land subdivision development codes and all of those things that is being considered at this time. But an example of how this paragraph that I mentioned here could possibly play out. There are some older residential areas in town that once had sidewalks on them. They're gone now. They were the old slate stone sidewalks. They've been gone for some time. In those areas, the zoning has been changed at times or could be changed, and the property, when that zoning change occurred, the property owner would be grandfathered in there to stay in that residence for some period of time until they passed away or the property was sold or whatever. In the meantime, when that occurs, then a business can purchase that residence and put some form of business in that. And there'd be no sidewalk there. There'd be no requirement for a sidewalk there if that change is allowed. And I think that anytime we have some change in something of that nature, we ought to have a sidewalk placed. We're dealing with sidewalk issues all over town by the many thousands of dollars each year. And we're far negligent in our keeping up with that sort of thing. So that's why I oppose this in that regard. If somebody else doesn't think that that's an issue, I guess that's okay too, but that's my 2 cents worth.
Mayor, may I?
Mr. Tripp?
Mr. Eaton, I respect that, and my thought on this is to go through the 3 readings and kind of have the due diligence of the process, and then if we need to tweak it, make changes towards the 2nd reading or 3rd reading, then, make those changes for it and but put it into play and let it do its due diligence process.
I agree.
Being an ordinance.
Anything else?
We'll have a chance later on to change
We'll
it.
have 2 more readings.
Yeah.
But we are in discussion. Does anybody else have anything to add? All right, then, new business 2. We moved this up to
We already did it.
mayor's report in order to move new business 11 into this slot so that This is the one on historic, changes to the historic district. So if everybody will help me keep that straight, we're actually doing new business 11 at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion in regard to this particular item to table this for further review by both the Planning Commission folks, the downtown group and the Historic District group, and the people who make decisions in the city, yourself, the city engineer, the building official, the fire marshal, and others, before we pass an ordinance that we only received a couple of days ago, or maybe was changed even today. I'm not sure of that, in which we've not had an opportunity to really ferret out anything that might need to be reconsidered in that, and that's my motion.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Eaton and second by Mr. Harris
That's correct.
to table new business 11. Anybody got any discussion on that?
Well, I think
All
we need to discuss the 15-day grace period there that he's got in here. We need to discuss that a little
We
bit.
have to vote on the motion to table first, don't we?
Yes, I believe so.
I think we're working out a procedure here.
Motion was to table.
Yes, that main motion will, it's either he hasn't made one that supersedes it, so.
Are we still in discussion?
That's a tricky one. You can, even though,
He can,
yeah, we're in
Yes.
discussion,
yes.
pending a motion to table.
Mr. Smith, I have a question for you and possibly the mayor too. Is there any urgency from your standpoint on addressing anything, any of these proposed or changes in the ordinance, or is there any urgency on addressing any of those specifically versus table?
Well, if you table it, then you still have a 15-day waiting period of prior notice before somebody can get a decision on a certificate of appropriateness. That's the main one that I see that has, I think, some sort of needs to be redressed possibly.
And I'm unfamiliar with the process, but if someone was to show up tomorrow to start this process, their first thing is 15 days?
Their first thing is providing notice to the public and in newspaper about 15 days prior to the meeting to advertise that they're applying for a certificate of appropriateness, posting on the property.
Mayor, do you know of anything that's in the works or anything that we may not know about that could potentially be set back to that 15 days versus table? I just want to be sure that we've vetted everything before we
Well,
take action.
there's been one in play that ran into some trouble, and so he needs to get a new COA. And that, the commission has worked on that, and there's been some communication since that time that if he would get something submitted in writing, that they would call a meeting and right away and try to get this taken care of. But my understanding is that because his application was denied, he would now be submitting a brand-new application, so you can't actually do the 15-day.
No, the 15-day would apply.
Yeah, you would have to do, you could not get around the 15-day. But there's also been discussion that we haven't heard from him in a couple of weeks. That may or may not be because he's been out of town. I've heard it, but that's actually vaporware, so that's all I know about it. But I would like to clarify one thing. One reason the reason I'm pursuing this is not to help this one guy. You've got a lot of exciting stuff happening down there, but I've had more than one person express a concern that this is going to come up again in the future. If y'all don't want to deal with it tonight, I'm not going to have any hard feelings. It's totally up to the council, but at some point, I think you've got to address it and maybe some other changes to make the process more user-friendly for developers and for the commission, frankly. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
In this tabling motion, what's going to be the mechanism to get that process moving to where we're not having the same discussion a month from now?
Well, first, he's got to get back in communication somehow
No,
and
no.
submit some paperwork.
No, I mean, but what's going to be the mechanism for review and possible changes, et cetera, to be put into play so that we have a more productive discussion next month?
Well, you know, we've talked about having some joint meetings and work with the commission and the planning commission, but that's strictly up to the council. It's y'all's decision. You know, I think we can all think of examples. We've done that in the past. Have some special meetings, get everybody around the table and work it out amicably, I hope, but that's the council's decision.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm not comfortable with passing an ordinance that we've just barely seen. And, you know, we've been down this road before, and I've heard it mentioned here over the last 4 or 5 years. You know, we're trying to not do that sort of thing. And here we are, right back trying to do it again. And, you know, the idea of this whole historic district thing in the first place was to instill some kind of a preservation ethic for our city that we did not have in Russellville before this commission was established. I know there's some things about maybe the way some things have been done that put a burr in some people's sides or under their saddle, but all you have to do is look across this street over here, and you ought to be able to understand why we need this thing, and we need some regulations about our historic downtown. And I think we need to take this walk very carefully.
Mr. Mayor, I being, now that I'm new representative on the Main Street, and Mr. Wiley is on the Historical Committee liaison, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Wiley, but I would certainly be willing to visit with commission over the next couple of 3 weeks and try to prepare some information for the council to consider at the next council meeting. And I would also offer that if anyone else on the council wants to participate, then they're welcome to do so, assuming the commission is willing to get together with us over the next couple of weeks and air their concerns and see if we can come to some resolutions.
Mayor, I'm not opposed to tabling it. I just want to make sure we were moving forward with discussions and so forth.
Anybody else?
I think you ought to continue the discussions.
And you're going to facilitate that, Mr. Harris? You'll get us started on that?
And we'll see if we can set something up and have those discussions.
Mr. Harris will get that started, get a mutual conversation going. Anybody else?
Of course, you know, reading this ordinance one time would not hurt anything, because you still have 2 more months to read it second and third time. I mean, you wouldn't be really jumping into anything. I mean, you could not approve it after the end of 3 months or tweak it as we go along, or, you know, along with information Mr. Harris may bring back from the Historic Commission and things like that. I mean, just because we read it doesn't mean we'll ultimately adopt it.
Mr. Harris, I'd like to be in on these meetings with you.
Certainly, I would appreciate that. You help me coordinate this information. So.
If y'all can, run that through either Kathy or Carrie and make sure we make the proper notifications to the press.
Okay.
Any other discussion on new business 11? We've got a motion to table and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, table till next month. New business number 3. This is an ordinance rezoning certain realty.
Make a motion, we suspend the rules, read by title only with short explanation.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Wiley, second, Mr. Eaton. Any discussion on the motion to table? To suspend. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Smith?
An ordinance rezoning certain realty in the city of Russellville, Arkansas, and for the purposes, this ordinance, if passed, would rezone property located at 4301 West Main Street, more particularly described by the attachment labeled Exhibit A, from R1 to C2.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Is there any problem with this being changed, being in the same packet with the Historic District Commission ordinance? It's maybe hasty. Any questions?
Say again, Mr. Smith.
Is there any issue about passing it tonight with it being in the same packet as the previous ordinance? You may not have gotten to see this one either.
Passing this with the previous ordinance.
Well, the previous one was in the same packet as this one, and you said you didn't get to see it. Did you get to read this one? Because you're changing the zoning.
Planning board approved this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
We've already.
I'll make sure everybody got to look at it. Okay, vote on this one.
So where are we? We got a
Got a motion and a second.
motion and a second. We've suspended the rules. Madam, would you call the roll?
Now, this is voting part?
This is motion to adopt.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
Ms. Freed Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
Yes.
Motion carries.
That'll bring us to new business 4, a resolution granting a special use permit.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business 5. This is an ordinance amending the zoning code.
Removing mobile homes.
Removing mobile homes. This was requested by the planning commission, and
Yes.
they would prefer urgency on it, let me put it that way.
Move to read by title only, since this is an ordinance, one time,
So
with a short
suspend the rules,
explanation.
read one time by title only.
Second that.
Second, Mr. Westcott. All in favor of the motion to suspend?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Smith.
An ordinance amending the zoning code of the city of Russellville, Arkansas, ordinance number 1699. For the purposes, this ordinance, if passed, would amend the zoning code article number 13, table of permitted uses, to amend the permitted use of dwelling single-family manufactured home by removing the permitted use from R3 zoning classification.
Move to adopt.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Got a motion and a second to adopt. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, old habits. Call the roll.
Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Eaton, Planning Commission, what do you think on the emergency clause?
I think so. I think we should take action on that and move to
We got a
approve
motion-
that
motion and a
emergency
second on
clause.
the emergency
Mhm.
clause.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Mr. Wiley, you seconded that,
Yes.
right?
Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. That'll bring us to new business 6, ordinance rezoning realty.
Move to do the same thing. Read one time by title only with a short explanation
Second.
and suspend the rules.
Got a motion to suspend the rules, read one time by title only with a short explanation. A second, Mr. Wiley. All in favor of the motion to suspend?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance to rezone certain realty in the city of Russellville, Arkansas, and for the purposes this ordinance, if passed, would rezone property which is located on South Knoxville Avenue that's labeled more specifically in attached Exhibit A, which is incorporated in this ordinance by reference, and would rezone it from C2 to R3.
Motion.
Second, to adopt.
Any other discussion? We got a motion and a second to adopt. Madam, would you call the roll?
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
Yes.
Motion carries.
What's the urgency on that one, Mr. Eaton?
I think they would like to get on with this, but I don't know that there's any great big rush, so we'll just leave it as is.
Okay.
Anybody else? Moving to number 7, ordinance approving final plat of Bill Bavoric property. This is an ordinance.
Make a motion we
Is
suspend the
anybody
rules,
else?
read
There
the
you
title
go.
only with short
Yes.
explanation.
One reading.
One reading.
I'll
Second.
that.
Second, Mr. Westcott.
Yeah.
We've got a motion to suspend for one reading only. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
An ordinance approving the final plat of Bill Bavoric property survey subdivision, accepting the dedication of the easements to the city of Russellville, Arkansas for other purposes. This ordinance passed would accept the final plat to the aforementioned subdivision, which is attached as Exhibit A of this ordinance. It would also grant a waiver that exceeds the narrow portion limit of 200 feet by 524 feet. Would grant that waiver and also accept any type of easements, utility or otherwise, within that survey.
Motion.
Motion to adopt.
Yes, sir.
Did he move?
Yeah,
I'll
Mr.
second
Wiley.
that.
Second, Mr. Westcott. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
Yes.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Mr. Garza, this is one of yours, isn't it? No?
That's,
Mr. Barboric,
Mr. Bavoric,
is there
emergency
urgency?
clause. It passed. Do you want to enact the emergency clause or request that so that it takes effect now?
motion.
We got a motion for Mr.
Second.
Wiley, Mr. Eaton. All in favor of the emergency clause?
Aye.
Aye.
Call the roll.
Mr. Wiley?
Aye.
Mr. Eaton?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Westcott?
Yes.
Ms. Freddie Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Stuber?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I believe that brings us to new business 8. This is a resolution
Motion.
for rehabilitation. Got a motion, Mr. Wiley.
Second.
Second, Mr. Westcott. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, resolution requiring rehab.
Motion.
Second.
Ditto, ditto? All right. We got a motion for adoption by Mr. Wiley, a second by Mr. Westcott. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That should get us to new business 10.
Motion on
Resolution
10.
Requiring where's that?
Motion on 10.
I'll second that on 10.
Motion and a second on 10. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And asked if we could get this table till he could appear here himself. He is ill today and could not come to town.
Advice?
Do you know what his intentions are with the home, whether it's to rehabilitate it or remove it himself? Or do you just here to deliver the message that give him till next time to make an appearance?
To my knowledge, he would like to know if there's a time limit for him to get his personal effects out of the house.
Okay.
And to
But-
my knowledge, he is probably gonna come up for a kidney transplant, in which he can file for a hardship loan against the property, which I understand, or I've been told has a $30,000 value, and to maybe help use a loan to counter the cost to rehabilitate the house.
So he does have plans, you're telling me, that to rehabilitate it?
For the past year, has been unoccupied because he's either been in the hospital or in a nursing home.
All right.
As to the condition of the house, I have no answers.
Okay. Do reconsideration?
Well,
How's he going to rehabilitate the property?
Pardon me?
How's he going to rehabilitate the property?
I don't have that answer. I just know he couldn't make it here tonight because he fell ill with whatever's going around at this time.
What you got, Mr. Smith, 30 days?
you think he'll be able to be here?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, if you pass it after tonight, then there's 30 days to rehabilitate himself, or there's 7 days to enter, or to remove it himself, or he needs to enter a contract within 7. But I think she's asking tonight for us to wait and then let him appear personally and give us what his intent is, and then we could do that at that time.
Mayor,
Okay.
has the city staff had any feedback or any communication with them?
Well, they probably don't, they probably haven't, or he
Just
wouldn't have
now?
been.
I understand there was a letter sent by Paul Slayton to the mayor's office and to the city attorney's office and to someone on the council. I don't know about, I
Yeah,
haven't
we've
seen
got-
one.
Okay, Mayor, I'll pull my motion.
And Mayor, I'd make a motion to table this for 30 days,
Second.
Okay.
or until the next meeting.
The original motion is withdrawn. That makes the second withdrawn. Mr. Tripp has a motion to table.
Table the next meeting, next count.
Who seconded that?
February's meeting.
I did.
Mr. Stuber seconded that. We're tabling this till the February meeting. He needs to plan to be here. Who's got a calendar?
February 18th.
February 18th.
All right, thank you very much.
Wait, I guess that's right. First, I guess we got to vote. won't we?
Well, yeah, but.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Call the roll. Clear that. Motion passes. New business 11, ordinance amending ordinance 2020. Oh, we did.
We
We've done
did
that
that,
one,
Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Let's
You're
roll
behind.
it back.
I make a motion on number 12.
Number 12, let's see what that is. It's a
Destruction.
resolution authorizing destruction of records.
I'll second that.
All right, got a motion from Mr. Wiley, second from Mr. Westcott. Any other discussion? All in favor then?
Aye.
Any opposed? That'll bring us to
13. 13.
Okay, this is a record ordinance.
Make a motion to suspend the rules, read by title only with short explanation.
We in that kind of hurry, chief? We in a big enough hurry to warrant suspending the rules?
Okay. All right, I'll pull that motion and make a motion to read it back.
You want to suspend the rules
Suspend
for
the
the
rules
first reading?
for the first reading.
Right. Somebody want to second that one?
I'll second.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Westcott, second. We're suspending the rules, we're reading by title only for the first reading only.
Can I ask a question at this point, Mr. Mayor?
Pertaining to the suspending the rules?
No.
Let's suspend the rules first. All in favor of suspending the rules?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, Mr. Eaton.
Okay, I've just got one question. I haven't had an opportunity to ask the chief about this. I think it's a good ordinance. I like how it's done. I've just got one question here about Section 4 about the 3 lists. Why is there a 3rd list for city vehicles or whatever and not 2 lists? Okay.
I believe he's gonna need some help on this one.
We're calling in the big guns for this?
Yeah, he's pulling in the big gun.
Mr. Eaton, the reason for 3 lists is that our initial list for small wreckers is going to be for things like traffic accidents for arrests that are made on the side of the street. Our second list is for large wreckers, which we only have 2 carriers in town that can handle that. And the 3rd list is for city vehicles that are broken down. We have that 3rd list so that if we call a wrecker out to handle a city vehicle, they don't lose their spot on the rotation for small wreckers, which is where they're going to make their money.
I'm not following that. In other words, you're saying that the city does not pay?
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
They're on our city rotation, and any city vehicle breaks down, and we call them, they don't charge.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. I was not aware of that.
Doesn't have to be just police vehicles.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, very good.
Is there not an existing ordinance? Is that?
There's 2. This would repeal the 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 2 that we have are outdated.
Okay, how would I know what has changed between, I mean,
You would have to read the old 2.
okay.
And it's basically a cleanup of the laws that changed that regulate records and what the city has to do or not do. And we're just mirroring the state law. And one of the things that was a controversial issue is we've removed the city fixing the pricing of tows, of towing vehicles. We've given this ordinance to all of the record companies that are on our rotation. They've had an opportunity to read it, they're satisfied with it so far, we've not got any negative comments. There's a 5-day period if you have a discrepancy or you have a complaint on the record company, you go to the police department to resolve, and then we can refer that to the Arkansas Towing Recovery Board if we cannot resolve it.
So if you remove the fixed cost, so if you call wrecker A, he might charge $100, but if you call wrecker B, he may charge $150.
That's true. All the record companies in the city of Russellville are very competitive in their pricing. There's probably not $50 difference in a standard tow. They're about $125 to $175 for a tow. The current ordinance, the way it's worded is, the prices are fixed by the council, and then the record companies cannot increase their fees without coming before the council. But this existing ordinance is 2005.
That's correct.
They've all increased their fees, and nobody has come to the council.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, though, that we would want some parity, since the individual involved in going to have their vehicle towed doesn't really have much say in who you're going to call. And it's the luck of the draw whether they get charged $200 or $100 for the tow. So we'll talk more about it, but that concerns me.
Of course,
If a person calls, if a person wants to use the record, they get to make a choice.
Is that right? if they're involved in an accident, they have the
Yes.
option to call a record.
we would use whoever's next on
Okay,
location.
thank you.
Or if
Because I know I
an
called him,
abandoned
I'm
car
gonna
was
go
left
ahead
out
and
on the
order it.
road and we couldn't contact the owner, we would call whoever's on our location.
Yeah,
Okay,
But as long as that person can say who they want, it's their choice.
thank you.
yeah.
Of
course, Mayor.
I guess.
Sir?
They would have to call around and get prices to know if they've got the cheapest one or not?
Possibly. Every record company that would be on our rotation has to, not that it would help at that moment, but they have to display on their facility what their rates are. You know, big plaque.
But the problem is, there's not many people gonna be running around at their facilities looking to see what their rates are, nor are they going to the police department where they're supposedly posted to see what their rates are. There should be some consistency in these rates, because the way this reads to me, they can charge basically what they want to, if nobody challenges them. And I mean, I understand why they all like it. I would too, if I were in the record business.
Well, the initial adoption of the original ordinance, they all had almost exact prices. It was adopted by the ordinance, it was I think it's $90 for a standard code in our current ordinance. Well, they're all charging about $150 to $175 now. So that ordinance was not enforced. If we want to put the pricing back in there and the council regulate it, I'm indifferent. But every year, it's gonna have to come back before the council because
The rates are gonna go up.
Waste management or
But how do you enforce that price?
the council.
How is that enforced?
That's enforced in the language of the ordinance through the police department primarily.
Somebody would have to make a complaint, and then they'd have to bring that to the city council to deal with. You know, everybody's in business, and they set their own prices. Plumbers, Mr. Stuber,
you're
you set
exactly
your
right.
own price, don't you?
You're exactly right.
And so, I mean, you shop around is how you deal with that.
That's exactly
in
right.
that situation,
But the city
they
doesn't
would
make
bring
the
that
higher
complaint
plumber.
all while their car is being
Yes.
held hostage inside that fence.
That's right. So,
You've got the non-consent issue.
The non-consent. And then, as I said, these records, now, we're depending on the ethics of those owners of those record companies and how they charge. But they are all very competitive right now. We have priced every one, and we know exactly what they charge. They're all within percentages of how they charge. Most of the complaints that we've gotten from people that's had their cars towed is because they know our ordinance says it's $90 and they got charged $150.
Yeah.
Or
So we're trying to
320.
clean this up. Or they don't want to pay the storage fee, which is generally $30 to $35
A day.
per day. Many times a car that's towed, by the time they pay their record fee, their impound storage fees, it may be more than what the car is worth.
Yeah.
And that's the complaint we get. The price that these record companies are charging is very competitive.
But at the very least, in my opinion, there should be at least some maximum charge put on this. I mean,
175.
you know,
to go and revisit it every
Yeah,
Yeah.
speaking for someone who's got teenagers and had to deal with this several times the last few years, this is the first I heard that I had an option, because typically the police come to the scene, do their assessment, write their tickets, and call the record service, and I look up and he pulls up. So it's the first I've heard that the consumer has the option.
They should be asking the driver.
That has never happened in the last, and I've been through this 3 or 4 times in the last few years, unfortunately, so, yeah.
Well, I had a wreck a couple of years ago, and they asked me who I wanted, and I told them who I wanted.
A lot of times in a motor vehicle crash like that, the person is very emotional at the time, and you may ask them about a record. 5 minutes later, they may not know what they've actually
Yeah.
told. So,
We do take steps too to keep people from being gouged. For instance, you'll see in the proposed ordinance that by January 15th of every year, every record company has to give us their price list for what they would charge for a standard tow so that we can ensure that those are within the same ballpark figure of their competitors.
So if they give you a price list and they charge more than what that price list, and somebody complains, they're kicked off the rotation, is that what?
They can be. That's at the discretion of the council, the mayor, and the chief. And what happens is when somebody does complain, we would follow the exact same procedures that the state towing board would do, and that would be to survey the record companies here in town, show the itemized list, and see what they would charge, so we know if it's in the same ballpark. If we can't resolve that issue within 5 days, we're required by state law to turn that over to the towing and recovery board and let them resolve it.
Mr. Mayor, I call for the question.
What is the question?
On the original motion that was made
First reading.
to read this on the first time.
On the question. No, he's calling for it to end debate.
Okay, so we're just in debate then.
This next one.
We suspended the rules, get on to the first reading. So there's nothing else to do.
It's just a rule.
All right,
Yeah.
motion to end debate then.
I have a second.
We're done debating. New business 14. And this would be a resolution amending the resolution we just passed organizing the city council.
Be what?
This is new business 14. It's amending the rules we just passed.
This is your,
chairing.
That's not reading what I asked you to put on there, so I'm gonna just table it.
You wanted to
on B?
No.
On Exhibit A?
Yeah, table it.
Motion to table. Somebody please second. There's Mr. Harris seconded. All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
One more motion, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Get out of here.